I've been married to Jenna for 5 years, and for the most part it's been a pretty good ride. We met in college, bonded over our love for music, and danced through life together, or at least that's how I saw it. Lately, though, things have started to feel off. I'd noticed subtle changes in her behavior: late nights out, vague excuses about work events, and a nagging feeling that I couldn't quite shake. I kept telling myself I was overreacting. Every couple goes through rough patches, right? But deep down, that familiar itch of doubt began to fester. One evening, I returned home from work earlier than usual. I was looking forward to a quiet night with my wife, maybe even surprising her with takeout from her favorite Thai place. But when I walked through the door, I was hit with an unsettling silence. The house was dimly lit, and Jenna was nowhere to be seen. I checked our bedroom, the kitchen, and even the bathroom, but she was missing. That's when I decided to check my phone. Maybe she'd texted. As luck would have it, I saw a message pop up on my screen. It was a notification for a photo upload from a nightclub called Neon Nights. My stomach twisted as I clicked on it. I don't know what compelled me to go through Jenna's social media, but I saw a picture of her, looking absolutely stunning, with another man. His arm was draped casually around her, and they were both grinning with that kind of joy that felt intimate and wrong. I felt my pulse quicken, and a suffocating sense of dread settled over me. I tried to convince myself it was just a friendly night out, but deep down I knew better. The niggling doubts had transformed into a full-blown certainty. I started piecing things together: the late-night text messages, the odd behavior, the way she'd suddenly become more secretive. In my gut, I felt the betrayal like a sharpened knife twisting deeper. After that, I couldn't just sit back and play the oblivious husband anymore. My mind raced as I thought about how to confront her. I prepared myself for the inevitable showdown, packing the living room, rehearsing my words like a script. I wanted to stay calm, but rage and heartbreak bubbled just beneath the surface. When she finally came home, I decided to confront her immediately. "Jenna, we need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The moment she walked in, I could see her expression change. Something like guilt crossed her face before she masked it with a smile. "Hey babe, what's up?" she chirped, her tone a mix of cheerfulness and confusion. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "I saw the photo from Neon Nights. I need to know who he is." Her reaction was instantly defensive. "What? It was just a stupid night out." "You're being ridiculous," she shot back, her tone sharp like a knife. I pressed on. "You know it's not just a night out, Jenna. You've been distant, secretive. I can't just brush this off." She huffed, rolling her eyes. "Oh, come on, you're being insecure. I was just dancing with friends. There's nothing going on." Her lies dripped with conviction, but I could see through the facade. That confrontation was brutal. Anger surged through my veins as I felt the weight of her betrayal. I wanted to scream, to shake her until she admitted the truth, but I stayed silent, grappling with the emotional turmoil that was enveloping me. The heartbreak washed over me like a flood, crashing against the walls I had built around my heart. I felt raw, exposed, and utterly lost. I could see the contemptuous look in her eyes as she insisted I was imagining things. My world felt like it was crumbling around me, and all I wanted was to understand why this was happening. How could she betray me, the person who had stood by her through thick and thin? But in that moment, I realized I needed to gather my thoughts and plan my next move. I had to figure out how to deal with this betrayal, and more importantly, how to make her understand the depth of her actions. This was just the beginning of a long, painful journey, one that would lead me down a darker path than I ever anticipated. The flames of vengeance were beginning to ignite within me, and I could feel the heat radiating from my core. I had a decision to make, and it was going to change everything. The confrontation with Jenna left me reeling. I spent that night tossing and turning, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. Anger, betrayal, heartbreak, it all mixed together into a toxic cocktail I couldn't escape. I had thought I knew the woman I was married to, but now I felt like a stranger had been living under my roof. While I lay there, I made a decision. I would not let this go unanswered. If she thought she could waltz around with some nightclub owner and come back to me as if nothing had happened, she was in for a rude awakening. The next day, I took the day off work. I needed to gather information and wrap my mind around what had just happened. I tried to keep cool, but my heart raced with a mix of dread and determination. I had already seen the evidence of her betrayal online, but I needed more. I needed facts and a plan. I decided to pay a visit to Neon Nights. It was a trendy club in a part of town that I had never really ventured into, a vibrant oasis of lights and sounds. I knew Jenna and her friends frequented it, but now it felt like a foreign territory, a battlefield, if you will. I had no idea what I would find, but I was ready to face whatever awaited me there. As I approached the club, the bass from the music thumped through my chest. The neon lights flickered and danced, casting an almost hypnotic glow over the crowd of people outside. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. I walked inside and was immediately struck by the chaos of sound and movement. The air was thick with anticipation, and the scent of sweat and alcohol hung heavily. I scanned the crowd. There behind the bar was Matt, the nightclub owner, a tall guy with dark hair and a confident grin. I could see the way he interacted with the patrons, laughing and flirting. And there she was, Jenna, leaning over the bar, giggling with him as he poured drinks. My blood boiled at the sight. It was one thing to suspect. It was another to see it play out right in front of me. I pulled out my phone, capturing a few discreet pictures of them together. I felt like a shadow lurking in the corners, my heart racing as I absorbed the scene. I was glued to the spot, grappling with emotions that threatened to overwhelm me. I felt sick to my stomach, yet I couldn't tear myself away. My instinct screamed at me to confront them right there, to drag Jenna away and expose Matt for what he was. But I knew that would only create a scene, and I needed my revenge to be more calculated. Instead, I made my way around the club, observing, listening. I overheard snippets of conversations about the club and how it had become the go-to spot for many couples looking to cheat on their partners. It was a hotbed for infidelity, a sanctuary for the unfaithful. I felt my resolve harden. This wasn't just about Jenna. It was about shutting down a place that facilitated betrayal. As the night wore on, I left the club with a plan forming in my mind. I would gather more evidence, but I also needed to dig into Matt's world. I learned that the club had been facing some scrutiny from the local authorities due to noise complaints and other issues. I decided that I could leverage that. If I could find a way to expose the club's problems, I could hit Matt where it hurt in his business. I spent the next few days compiling information, gathering reports, and looking into complaints against the club. I even reached out to a few other disgruntled neighbors who had faced issues with the noise and rowdiness that the club attracted. It felt good to have a plan, to have something to focus on other than my shattered heart. Jenna, oblivious to the storm brewing, continued her routine, and I kept my cool. I played the role of the loving husband, doing my best to hide the anger that simmered beneath the surface. I made sure to ask her about her nights out, feigning interest. Each time she lied, saying she was just with friends, it fueled my determination. Eventually, I decided to go one step further. I contacted local news stations and tipped lines about the club's illegal activity, hinting at the rampant drug use and prostitution that I had witnessed during my visit. I painted a vivid picture without revealing my identity, careful to maintain my cover. I wanted the authorities to take a hard look at Matt's operation. As the days ticked by, I felt my heart pound with every step I took toward my goal. The adrenaline was intoxicating, and I reveled in the thought of making Jenna regret her decisions. I imagined the day the club would be shut down, her face when she learned that she could no longer dance with her friends. That sense of justice was intoxicating. Little did I know, it was just the beginning of a wild ride full of twists and turns, a journey that would teach me more about myself than I ever anticipated. I was ready to unleash my plan, and I could feel the excitement building. My world may have been shattered, but I was no longer the victim. I was the storm coming for everything she had built her betrayal upon. The days turned into weeks as I meticulously executed my plan. I had become a ghost in my own home, an observer lurking in the shadows, quietly gathering intel. Jenna continued her charade, blissfully unaware that I was one step ahead. Each time she slipped out for an evening at Neon Nights, I felt a sense of satisfaction, I knew what awaited her, and it fueled my resolve. As I continued to gather information, I also began to reach out to others who had grievances against Matt and his club. I found a few people who had been wronged, former employees who had quit due to unsafe working conditions, patrons who had been drugged unknowingly, and even a couple who had been assaulted in the club's bathroom. Each story added fuel to the fire in my heart, and I felt an overwhelming sense of purpose. I was no longer just a betrayed husband. I was a crusader seeking justice. One evening, I struck gold. I received an anonymous tip that a major drug deal was set to go down at the club that weekend. I had a contact at the local police department who I had built rapport with over the years, and I decided it was time to put my trust in them. I fed them the information, painting a vivid picture of what would unfold that night. I could practically hear the gears of justice turning in motion. That Saturday night, I went to the club, feigning interest in the scene. I had a couple of drinks, keeping my composure while keeping an eye out for Jenna. I could see her mingling with friends, laughing and dancing as if she had no care in the world. It made my stomach churn, but I had to stay focused. As the evening wore on, I noticed Matt flirting with a group of women, his gaze sweeping across the room with arrogance. I took a deep breath and held my phone tightly. I was waiting for the right moment. Then I heard it, the unmistakable sound of sirens approaching. My heart raced with anticipation. Just as I had expected, the police stormed into the club, lights flashing and voices booming. I felt a rush of adrenaline course through me as I watched the chaos unfold. Bouncers tried to block the entrance, but it was futile. The scene erupted into a frenzy as patrons began to panic, trying to escape. I stood back, hidden in the shadows. The satisfaction of seeing Jenna's world crumble washed over me. I spotted her face as she turned to see what was happening. Shock and confusion washed over her features, and I felt a dark thrill at the sight. It was the moment of reckoning, the beginning of her understanding of what I had orchestrated. The police quickly made their way through the club, separating the patrons from the employees. I could see Matt trying to assert his authority, but his bravado crumbled as officers surrounded him. I slipped outside to catch my breath, feeling like I was on the edge of something monumental. As the night progressed, I received updates from my police contact. They had found drugs hidden within the club, along with evidence of illegal activity. It was a full-scale operation that Matt had been running under the guise of a nightclub. The thought of Matt's world crashing down felt like a victory I couldn't have imagined a few weeks ago. I headed home, feeling a mix of exhilaration and nervousness. What would Jenna say when she learned the truth? Would she finally realize the consequences of her actions? I spent the night full of anticipation, unable to sleep as I replayed the events in my mind. The following morning, I woke up to a flurry of news alerts on my phone. The police had raided Neon Nights, and the headlines were everywhere. The club was shut down indefinitely, and a slew of arrests had been made, including Matt's. It was a bittersweet victory. I felt the thrill of revenge, but also the weight of what Jenna's reaction would be. When she finally came home that evening, the look of disbelief on her face spoke volumes. She stumbled through the door, her eyes wide, demanding answers. "What happened? I heard the club was raided. They said it was a drug thing," she exclaimed, her voice trembling. "Yeah, it was," I replied calmly, leaning against the counter. "And it turns out your friends aren't exactly who you thought they were." Jenna's face paled as the realization hit her. "Matt, you can't be serious," she stammered, panic creeping into her voice. "I didn't know, I swear." "Didn't know or didn't care?" I asked, my voice low and steady. "You chose to be with him, Jenna. You made that choice, and now you're reaping the consequences." She tried to justify herself, babbling about how it was all just a mistake, how she didn't mean to hurt me. But I wasn't interested in her excuses anymore. I had gone from the wronged husband to the catalyst for her downfall, and it was a power I relished. The emotions surged within me, anger, betrayal, but also a sense of liberation. I watched as Jenna's world crumbled right in front of her eyes. Her party life was over, and I had made sure of it. The weight of her actions pressed down on her, and I felt a flicker of satisfaction knowing that I was the one who had orchestrated this reckoning. As she stood there, pleading and desperate, I realized this was not just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my life. I had been shattered, but now I was ready to rebuild, free from the shackles of betrayal. And I couldn't wait to see what came next. The aftermath of the raid on Neon Nights sent shockwaves through the community, and Jenna's reaction was a whirlwind of emotions. She flailed between anger, confusion, and desperation, trying to make sense of how everything had spiraled out of control. I had expected her to lash out at me, to blame me for her predicament, but instead, she seemed to shift into a state of denial. "Matt's not a bad guy," she exclaimed, her voice rising in pitch as she paced the floor. "He didn't do anything wrong. I was just dancing, you have to believe me." Watching her scramble for excuses was a surreal experience. Here was the woman I thought I knew, scrambling to defend a man she knew had been cheating with her. I felt a mix of pity and contempt as she grasped at straws, desperately trying to salvage her reputation while I stood there, a silent observer of her unraveling facade. "Jenna, you really think this is about Matt?" I replied, keeping my tone calm. "This is about you. You made a choice to be with him, and now it's come back to bite you. You thought you could have it all without consequences." Her eyes flashed with anger as she shot back. "You think this is all my fault? You're the one who's making it worse. You could have just talked to me instead of trying to ruin my life." I felt the anger boiling beneath my surface, but I forced myself to remain composed. "You're right, I should have talked to you, but how could I? You weren't even honest with yourself." Jenna fell silent, her expression shifting from anger to something softer, guilt, perhaps. I wasn't sure, but it was too late for apologies and justifications. The damage had been done, and I finally understood that I couldn't save her from herself. As the days turned into weeks, Jenna's life began to crumble. Her social circle evaporated overnight. Friends who had once flocked to her turned their backs when they learned of her ties to the now infamous nightclub. I watched as her confidence eroded, stripped away by the harsh reality of her choices. In the midst of her unraveling, I felt a strange sense of vindication. I had fought to reclaim my power, and in doing so, I had exposed the truth. I had taken control of a situation that had left me feeling helpless. Yet that sense of victory was tinged with sadness. I had loved Jenna once, and seeing her flounder was painful to witness. Despite everything, I still found myself questioning whether I wanted her back. There had been good times, moments of laughter and joy. But now they felt tainted by betrayal. I wrestled with my feelings, unsure of the path forward. Should I simply move on or try to salvage what was left of our marriage? One evening, I decided to confront those feelings head-on. I sat down with Jenna after dinner, the silence between us heavy with unsaid words. "We need to talk about where we go from here," I began cautiously. Jenna looked up, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "I know I messed up. I didn't mean for any of this to happen," she whispered. "I get that," I said, forcing myself to meet her gaze. "But we can't just pretend like everything is fine. What was happening at the club? What did you really think was going on?" She hesitated, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her shirt. "I thought it was just fun. I never intended for it to get out of hand. Matt was he was charming and exciting. I guess I wanted to feel alive," she admitted, her voice cracking. "Alive?" I echoed, disbelief creeping into my tone. "You were married, Jenna. It's not just about you feeling alive at the expense of our relationship. You had no regard for what we built together." Her expression shifted to one of regret, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of the woman I fell in love with. "I know I messed up. I'm so sorry. I've been a terrible person, and I don't blame you if you want to leave me." I took a deep breath, the weight of her words hanging heavy in the air. I had never wanted to end our marriage. I had wanted her to fight for us, to show me that she cared. "What do you want, Jenna? Do you want me back, or are you still hung up on him?" She hesitated, the silence stretching between us like a chasm. "I want you," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I messed up and I can't change what I did, but I want to make it right. I want to be better." Her sincerity hit me like a blow. Part of me wanted to believe her, while another part screamed in protest. I had seen the truth of her actions. They were hard to ignore. "Trust doesn't come easily after betrayal, Jenna," I replied, trying to remain composed. "It's going to take time." "I know," she nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I'm willing to do Whatever it takes, I'll fight for you, I'll fight for us. As she spoke, I felt the wall I had built around my heart begin to crack. There was a part of me that still cared for her, that wanted to believe she could change. But could I trust her again? The decision loomed over me like a specter. I needed to figure out if this was a moment of clarity for her or just a fleeting realization of the consequences she faced. I wanted to be hopeful, but the wounds were still fresh. In that moment, I realized that this journey was not just about revenge. It was also about healing for both of us. I needed to take time to process everything, to weigh my options. All I knew was that I was no longer the same person who had come home that fateful night to a world of betrayal. I had become stronger, more resilient, but I still faced the hardest choice of all, to forgive or to let go. The following weeks were a whirlwind of emotions as Jenna, and I navigated the fallout from her choices. I had made it clear to her that the road to rebuilding trust wouldn't be easy. While she professed her desire to change, I approached each day with caution, unsure of whether I could truly believe her. Jenna threw herself into therapy, attending sessions diligently. She called me afterward, sometimes teary and vulnerable, sharing her insights and realizations about her behavior. I listened, nodding along, but there was a part of me that remained guarded. I meant what I said about wanting to believe in her, but it felt like walking on a tightrope. Each step forward was paired with the fear of falling back into the abyss of betrayal. One afternoon, Jenna returned home from a therapy session, her face radiant with a newfound clarity. "I think I finally understand why I did what I did," she said, her eyes brimming with hope. "I was lost. I forgot who I was and what we had. I just wanted to feel free, but I lost sight of you in the process." I felt a flicker of something, perhaps hope, but it quickly tempered with skepticism. "That's good, Jenna. It's a step, but understanding why you acted is just the beginning. It doesn't undo the hurt you caused," I reminded her gently. "I know," she replied, her voice earnest. "I'm not expecting us to just go back to normal. I want to show you that I can be better, that I can be the partner you deserve." We agreed to take things slow, but it was hard. Jenna began to attend support groups for those who had struggled with infidelity, and for the first time, I saw her surround herself with people who understood the weight of her actions. It was a small comfort, but it helped me see a glimpse of the woman I had fallen in love with. One evening, I decided to take a leap of faith. I invited her to a local coffee shop where we used to spend countless hours discussing our dreams and futures. The familiar aroma of roasted beans and baked goods wrapped around us like a hug, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a hint of nostalgia rather than resentment. "Remember when we used to come here every Saturday?" I asked, leaning back in my chair. Jenna smiled softly, a hint of genuine warmth lighting up her features. "How could I forget? You'd always order that awful pumpkin spice latte, thinking it made you sophisticated." I chuckled, the tension in the air dissipating for a moment. "Yeah, I was trying to impress you. I was a fool back then." "No, you weren't," she said, her voice sincere. "You were just a guy in love trying to figure things out. I'm sorry I lost sight of that." I looked at her, really looked at her, and for a moment I felt the walls start to crumble even further. But could I really allow myself to forgive her? It was a battle within me, one that ebbed and flowed like the tide. As we talked, she shared more about her sessions, the realizations she was coming to terms with. It was bittersweet to listen to her. I wanted to support her, but part of me held back, fearing the heartbreak of putting my trust in her only to see it shattered again. Days turned into weeks, and as I watched Jenna's transformation, I felt my resolve begin to soften. I started to see the woman I had once loved, the woman who had made me laugh and dream. Maybe, just maybe, she could be that person again. Yet the specter of doubt loomed ever present. One night, after yet another argument about her late nights out with friends from the support group, I found myself spiraling. "How can I trust you?" I asked, my frustration spilling out. "You say you're working on yourself, but every time you go out, I'm left behind worrying." "I'm trying to find my identity again," she shot back, her voice rising. "I can't just sit at home and pretend everything is fine. I need to be around people who understand what I went through." "Then why can't you understand how I feel? I'm still here. I'm still willing to work on us, but I can't if you keep putting me in the shadows," I replied, my heart racing with anger and hurt. The argument left us both emotionally drained, and as I lay in bed that night, I wondered if I could ever truly forgive her. The pain of betrayal was still fresh, the scars running deep. A few days later, I made a decision. I reached out to my old friend Alan, who had been my rock through the turmoil, and we met for drinks. I needed an outsider's perspective. As we sat there, I poured out my heart. I want to believe in her. I see her trying, but it's hard. Every time she goes out, I feel like I'm losing her all over again. It's like I'm in a constant state of limbo. Do I fight for this, or do I cut my losses? Alan listened intently, nodding thoughtfully. You're not weak for wanting to give her a chance, but you have to protect your heart too. If she's truly trying to change, then maybe it's worth it. Just make sure you set boundaries. You deserve to feel secure in your relationship. His words resonated with me, and I realized I needed to communicate my boundaries to Jenna. I didn't want to feel like a prisoner in my own home, waiting for the inevitable heartbreak. That night, I sat down with Jenna again, my heart pounding in my chest. We need to talk about our boundaries. I want to support you, but I can't keep feeling like I'm in a waiting game, I said firmly. She nodded, her expression attentive. I completely understand. What do you need to feel secure? When I laid out my expectations, I could see her absorbing every word. I need to know that you're not putting yourself in situations that could lead you down the same path. I need to feel like I'm a priority in your life, I explained. I promise I will do my best to make you feel that way, she replied, her voice steady. I don't want to lose you again. It was a step forward, and as we talked, I realized that rebuilding our relationship might be possible after all. I still had doubts, but there was a flicker of hope that maybe we could emerge from this stronger. Little did I know, the road ahead would be filled with challenges, but I was finally ready to face them together, if she could prove she was worthy of the chance. Our journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long while, I felt a glimmer of optimism. I was learning to balance the weight of my heart and my desire for a fresh start, and I hoped we could find a way forward. As time went on, Jenna and I continued to navigate the complexities of our relationship. The boundaries we had established became the foundation upon which we began to rebuild. It wasn't always easy, and there were moments when the shadows of doubt would creep back in. But there was also a newfound openness between us, a willingness to communicate that had been sorely lacking before. Jenna remained dedicated to her therapy, and I decided to join her for a few sessions. It felt like a necessary step, both for my own healing and for us as a couple. Sitting in those rooms, sharing our thoughts and fears, made it abundantly clear just how much we had both been affected by the ordeal. I saw Jenna's vulnerability, and it allowed me to let my guard down just a little. One evening, after a particularly emotional therapy session, Jenna took my hand and led me to the park nearby. The sun was setting, casting a golden hue over the landscape, and it felt almost surreal. I've been thinking a lot about us, she said, her voice tentative but determined. I know I hurt you deeply, and I can't change that. But I want to make things right. I want to show you that I can be the partner you deserve. I want that too, I admitted, squeezing her hand gently. It felt good to reconnect in such a simple way. But it's going to take time for me to fully trust you again. I need to see consistent actions, not just words. I understand, she replied, her eyes earnest. I'm committed to this, and I won't let you down again. I've learned so much about myself through this process, and I know I need to be better for you, for us. That conversation was a turning point. I finally felt a shift, a sense of hope that maybe this could work. We started rekindling old traditions, like visiting our favorite coffee shop and going for long walks together. We laughed more, reminisced about the good times, and slowly began to forge a new bond. Jenna still faced challenges. She struggled with the guilt of her past actions, often spiraling into self-blame when she felt she had failed in some way. I would hold her close during those moments, reminding her that everyone makes mistakes. It was how we learned from them that mattered. One night, as we sat on the couch watching a movie, I felt a rush of affection. I turned to her, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. You know, I'm proud of you. You've come so far, I said, my voice filled with sincerity. She smiled, her eyes lighting up. I couldn't have done it without you. You've been so patient with me. I'm grateful for that. But with every step forward, I was acutely aware of the fragility of our situation. I had to fight against the instinct to keep my guard up, to remain emotionally distant. It was a constant battle within myself, but each time I chose to open up, I felt the walls surrounding my heart weaken just a little. As we continued to rebuild, we made a pact to always communicate openly, to check in with one another about our feelings and progress. We knew that trust couldn't be rebuilt overnight. It required constant effort and vulnerability. Months passed, and Jenna began to forge new friendships outside of the club scene, focusing on healthier outlets and interests. She joined a dance class, a hobby she had abandoned during her time at Neon Nights. I watched her rediscover her passion for dance, and there was something beautiful about seeing her embrace that joy again, this time with integrity. One evening, during one of her recitals, I sat in the audience, my heart swelling with pride as I watched her perform. She radiated confidence and grace, and in that moment I realized how far she had come. She was no longer the woman who had betrayed me. She was a woman who had fought hard to rebuild her life, and I was grateful to be a part of that journey. After the show, she rushed over to me, her face aglow with excitement. "Did you see me? I felt so alive up there." "I did," I replied, wrapping my arms around her. "You were amazing. I'm so proud of you. You've worked so hard, and it shows." As she beamed at me, I felt a warmth spread through my chest. For the first time in a long while, I allowed myself to envision a future together. It wouldn't be easy, and I knew there would be bumps along the road, but there was also a sense of renewal, a realization that we had both grown from this experience. Looking back on the journey we had taken, from betrayal to rebuilding trust, I learned that love isn't just about the good times. It's also about how you rise from the ashes of turmoil. It's about facing the truth, no matter how painful, and being willing to fight for what truly matters. I had taken a risk by letting Jenna back into my heart, and it was a decision I would never regret. She had proven herself time and again, and while the scars of the past would always remain, they served as reminders of our strength and commitment to one another. We had both learned valuable lessons about love, forgiveness, and the importance of self-awareness. Our relationship was still a work in progress, but it was a work I was willing to continue, step by step, hand in hand. And as I stood there watching her radiant smile, I knew that together we could conquer anything that lay ahead.